Hello, and welcome back to another video. In this week's video, I wanted to talk all about how I trim stoneware bowls. More specifically, how I put like a foot ring on a stoneware bowl. A lot of my bowls, I don't typically trim foot rings into them, but I've changed my tune and I've gone back to some of my old ways. I've let these bowls sit for about 2 days under plastic after throwing them. This gets them to the perfect consistency, as most potters will call it, the leather hard consistency. I don't want them too soft and I don't want them too hard to where the clay's kind of chipping away as I trim them. I just want nice ribbons to be removed as I'm trimming these bowls. I'm also going to discuss some of the trimming tools that I use and just some things to look for as you are trimming. Have I said trimming enough? So as you can see on the right, that bowl is clearly untrimmed, and on the left, this bowl is trimmed. I'm trying to match the outside of my bowl to the inside of my bowl, and that can be fairly easy to do and maybe not so easy to do. I look at the inside, I try to see the shape of, the curve of the inside, and I try to trim away any of the excess clay to mimic that inside curve to the outside. I like to see where my base begins, the diameter of my base, and that's a good indicator of where your foot should begin as well. That way you can get rid of as much clay as possible without trimming through your vessel. So I'm just tapping this bowl into center. I like to wet the wheel head because it creates a little bit of suction and it'll keep that bowl in place as I'm trimming it. I give a little bit of pressure to the bottom and push down, and then I get some lugs from some firmer clay. I don't like the lugs to be too soft because they have a tendency to move. The bowl can kind of push those lugs around, so I like the lugs to be a little bit harder. So once I have that bowl nice and secure, these calipers are gauged to the previous trimmed bowl, so each of the feet of these bowls can be the exact same. These are some of my favorite trim tools. My only trim tools that I really use. These are the Kemper Proline tools. I love them. I have one small and one big. These are diamond core tools, and these are so cool. You can interchange the blades, and they send you extra blades when you buy one. So they're such a good investment, and they literally last forever. Nice and flat, nice flat edge on these. And this is a special tool. It is a tungsten carbide. It's some of the sharpest metal on the earth. It's also extremely fragile, so you have to be very careful with them. This is my little stamp. I got it laser engraved, and I've had it for a very long time. This is a mud tool sponge. It's the medium absorbent grade, and this is a mud tools rib that I've had for about 9 years. I use it to burnish all my pots after I trim them, and it is literally as sharp as a razor at this point. So you'll notice I go in first with my tungsten carbide tool. These tools are incredibly sharp and they're really good for taking away the majority of the clay that I need to be getting rid of, at least to establish my foot. I kind of just go straight into it, applying a lot of pressure, but securing the blade so it doesn't chatter. At this point, I'm just trying to get the clay all the way down to the mark that I made with my gauge. And I'll know once I hit that mark, I don't need to trim away anymore. I can stop. That's where my foot's going to be. I've established the diameter of it, and I don't need to go any further. So now that I've gotten the diameter of my foot ring established, I won't use this tool for much more than just cleaning up the sides of the pot. These things have a tendency to chatter just because they're so sharp, and I don't like the marks from chattering. So I'll switch over to my Kemper tools, a teardrop tool, and I like using all different sides of this. It's got a big side and a small side. I use these little round loop parts of the tool to remove excess clay, and then I'll use the flat part to get rid of those trim lines that are left. You can see the flatness just removing those trim lines and really refining the shape of this thing. I like to work from the outside and then I leave the foot for last. So now I can refine that foot ring and start digging out the clay from the middle. And for that, I'll come in with these diamond core tools. They have such a flat edge, it just makes it really easy to refine the shape of these little foot rings. I sort of bevel an angle into it, and I'll match the inside to that same angle. Because tools have a tendency to get dull and kind of warp the more that you use them, clay is so gritty that it kind of sands down the edge of these. But with these diamond core tools, that doesn't happen. They retain a really nice flat edge. So as I'm carving clay away from the center of these, I can make sure that it's not going to dip, it's not going to bow, it's not going to do anything weird. It's just going to retain a nice flat shape to match the outside to the inside. I tap a little bit and I push a little bit just to make sure that I'm not going too far and I'm not going to trim through my pot. There's nothing worse than trimming through the middle of your pot. It's happened to me many times. And, you know, just with practice, just with repetition, you kind of get the feel of how far to go with the base of your pots as you're trimming these foot rings. It helps to use a needle tool while you're throwing to see the depth and know how much you need to take away. After I've got all of my clay removed and I'm happy with that foot, I'll use a little bit of water with my sponge, and then I'll remove that slip that I created with my metal rib. And this burnishes the pot and puts all the grog back into the bowl and makes for a really nice, smooth finish. I'll remove my lugs, and since those lugs kind of covered the lip, I wasn't able to reach it, so I'll go back over just briefly with my rib and smooth out the lip of the pot. And there it is. There is our trimmed bowl. It's so rewarding to trim a foot ring into the bottom of the pot, but I also understand why some people don't like to do it. They have a tendency to chip, especially in a restaurant setting, where if you don't trim a foot ring and you just have a nice flat bottom, it won't chip and it might last longer, but it gives the pot a really beautiful profile, and it's really fun to do, and it's a nice skill to have. I'm just admiring my bowl here, and then I'll set them down on their lips because I don't want, if the pot, you know, the more clay that you remove, the more fragile it becomes, so I'll set them on their lip to firm up, and then I'll flip them back over once they get a little more firm. These are a few finished bowls. This is just some raw clay, and the inside is glazed where the outside is not. This one's glazed in a nice matte white, and the clay has a little bit of added manganese to it to give it those speckles. You can see here that this one is just the raw clay, and these will dry for about 2 to 3 days until they get bone dry, and then they're ready for a bisque. And after the bisque firing, they'll be ready for a glaze firing. If you want to learn how to throw bowls or how to center, I recommend checking out some of my other videos where I cover all of that. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video.